Hi, my name is Rich. I'm trying to become the next governor of Washington State in November. Our country's internal politics were founded on persuasion, which is a really important aspect of how our society operates today. So here are 10 minutes to becoming more persuasive in your discussions concerning city development. We must develop our living areas here in Washington State. As our population increases, we don't have any other choice. If we fail to develop our cities, we will create very high housing prices due to an insufficient housing supply and shortages. This is exactly what we are currently experiencing with the unsuccessful growth management program, which started in 1990 in major cities across the state. The attempt to satisfy growth management by increasing a city's population density is not currently being allowed due to environmental and quality of life concerns. Satellite cities, however, connected to the hub city via light rail, could alleviate congestion and the aesthetic concerns for our growing cities. Seattle traffic has now become counterproductive and needs relief in order to allow for further business growth in the area. The average commute is now the second worst in the United States at 28 minutes. Why don't we fix this? Why is this allowed? Spokane traffic has now become life-altering, but not yet counterproductive. With an average commute of 21 minutes, Interstate 90 stoppages through the city are now becoming common for the first time. There are 13 goals as stated by the Growth Management Program, intending to properly address an increasing population in Washington State. The first 4 goals are the most important and that which we'll focus on in this discussion. The goals include concentrated urban growth, sprawl reduction, regional transportation, and affordable housing. The good news is that these are some great goals. The bad news is that the program is failing at all of them. These goals attempt to keep livable areas in Washington State aesthetically pleasing and preventing a Los Angeles-type sprawl of homes that spread out for hundreds of miles. However, the sprawl is exactly what is happening currently in the Puget Sound area, where so-called edge cities are beginning to expand into each other, such that the result is a giant sprawl from Olympia to Everett. City governments aren't allowing the planned increase in urban density due to resident concerns over the environment and lifestyle changes. County commissioners currently protest that county land in the Puget Sound area is almost becoming non-existent as cities continue their creeping, annexing more and more land. The valuable contribution that the Growth Management Act has made to Washington state culture is the increase of awareness for both the public and building developers to protecting critical land areas and waterways. Critical areas include things like wetlands, water sources, wildlife habitat, and floodplains. In fact, 95% of the state's population lives in areas that either must complete development plans or have opted to complete the plans. And the program initially succeeded in directing more people toward living in established urban areas rather than continually expanding those urban areas. However, there are no performance metrics or assessment tools for the program, so implementers never really know if it is working or not. Rather than actually accomplishing a higher density of living areas in the cities, via housing towers and high-unit housing developments, developers now find a near impossible route to achieving building plan acceptance. An anti-housing movement has found that they can use the State Environmental Policy Act, SEPA, to get new housing developments either completely canceled or delayed by years such that the developer eventually bankrupts the plan. Anti-housing activists have used even the most mundane critiques to prevent new developments, such as, quote, rooftop solar panels would block views and cast shadows. The result of this not in my backyard influence brings a toxic uncertainty to new construction and a reduction of available housing units. Developers are stuck in a no-win situation where they can't get high-density housing plans within cities approved, and it remains illegal to build anything outside of the cities. In places where more affordable housing units are usually built, in high-density buildings or further from city centers, construction isn't taking place, leaving the situation we see today, a dramatic and overwhelming housing shortage of over 225,000 homes in the state. Per the research accomplished by the group Up for Growth, during the years from 2000 to 2015, Washington state fell short by over 225,000 homes of meeting its housing needs. In a state with only 7.5 million people, that's a significant shortage. The shortage represents 7.5% of the total number of existing homes today, which is the 8th worst housing shortage of all states in the US. And the economic results are dramatic. Even though the state has seen a decade's worth of economic expansion, the severe housing shortage has significantly impacted people's ability to afford housing. Housing shortages always hit lower-income citizens the hardest, with unsustainable price increases. As of 2017, half of the renters in the Seattle metro area were, quote, cost-burdened, which means that they must spend more than 30% of their entire income on rent. Since developers can't get approval to build things like starter homes, the luxury apartments they do build aren't helping poorer residents. A large portion of the homeless population in Seattle state that they live on the streets in part because they can't afford housing. The state government has responded by allotting $160 million in tax dollars to address homelessness and affordable housing in the state budget, signed in 2020, and a new report states that it may even take $1 billion more every year to fully address Seattle's affordable housing shortage. But isn't the government creating and exacerbating the homeless issues with its regulations and denial of housing units within its cities, and then requiring taxpayer money to bail out that problem? A problem that the free market would have otherwise addressed by allowing development of low-income housing? And the situation is only going to get worse. During the 1990s, Washington State added over 1 million people for the first time ever, and studies project that in the next 20 years, the state will increase its population by 25%, or almost 2 million people. Even with this growth, the creation of new housing units in the state from 2000 to 2017 was 0.99 units per new household. That means that there were fewer housing units built than there were new people that needed them. That is a recipe for high housing costs, homelessness, lower quality of life, and future growth problems. For reference, the national average during this time was 1.06 housing units created per new household. Even the environment suffers due to the housing shortages. Increasing housing densities near transit stations could have resulted in 2.3 million fewer miles traveled daily, or about 75,000 fewer cars on the road annually. Nor does the shortage exist only in the Puget Sound area. Spokane has less than 2% rental availability, a historically low number of rental properties available. House purchase availability is almost zero, with immediate competitive bidding for any house listed for sale. Buyers are paying thousands of dollars over asking price for the honor of purchasing a home. In a place where there usually exists 6 months worth of housing supply on the market, there currently exists only 1 month's supply. Zillow has even rated Spokane as third on the list of hottest real estate markets in the United States. Every city government that scuttles new housing developments should keep these numbers in mind. Without new housing, cities in Washington state will follow the San Francisco model of ever-increasing home prices and an ever-increasing homeless population that can't afford them, to the point where the city resembles an outdoor homeless shelter. Seattle saw the largest growth of any city in the nation from 2013 to 2018. It grew 14% in population, which equates to 91,000 people during that period, more than any other city in the U.S. With Seattle essentially closed to new housing development, the city has attempted two options in the effort to keep itself from becoming an outdoor homeless shelter. One, hope that the problem goes away someday, or two, simply accept them as homeless on the street and in camps. However, what if there were a third option? What if it were possible to develop affordable housing options outside of the city, and then connect the two via highly efficient transportation? Places like Stockholm, Singapore, and Tokyo have a set of smaller cities surrounding them like satellites. These cities are planned urban areas called satellite cities and exist to ease the burden of a large population on the central city. These cities exist in 30 other countries around the world as well and house anywhere from 30,000 people to 250,000 people. They are separated from the central city by aesthetically pleasing, walkable greenbelt areas, and they connect to a central city via highly efficient rail systems. These cities have their own municipal governments, core downtown, and employment opportunities. However, these cities offer housing prices that can be half of what is found in the central city, with the opportunity for a daily commute. Rather than completing a single Puget Sound sprawl that includes Olympia, Tacoma, Seattle, and Everett, what if we could develop an ever-expanding system of individual satellite cities? This system could then perhaps truly accomplish the growth management program's vision of a compact urban landscape, well-designed and well-furnished with amenities, encompassed by natural resource lands and a rural landscape. Kenya, Tanzania, Uganda, and the Congo are all currently executing major satellite city programs due to high population growth in an effort to reduce their informal housing sectors, or slums, that are most often characterized by lack of formal housing, poor sanitation, poverty, and high unemployment levels. Can Washington State's cities follow their lead?